So now we're on to separating the crankcase halves. We have a problem. The book says to remove the bottom crankcase bolts first. Now the problem with that is if I remove the bottom crankcase bolts, then turn this frame over and remove the top crankcase bolts, the whole lot will hit the floor. So I've got to go against convention and I've got to remove the top crankcase bolts first. Here's what it is. So let's start loosening. Let's see how far we get. So that's it. There we go, we've got that one, look. Just a bit awkward with that mounting being in the way, but it is what it is. There we go. Right, first lot. They're the M6 ones. M6 thread, 10mm head. So now we've got these, which are a 8mm. Back to the plot, an 8mm thread with a 12mm head. So we need to crack them off. They were tight. Okay, buzz them out. Put you back into view. That's it. Just two of them. You'll notice that these two long 8mm bolts around this part of the gearbox, which is where the output shaft is. Right, that's that done then. So let's double check. We've got all the bolts out. Obviously that one won't come out, but they're all out. There's nothing else. Okay, let's spin it over and let's do the checking for bolts. None there. Okay, so we've got a row here. And then we've got what we call the main bearing bolts. Right, let's undo the small ones first. Not using all the power of the impact gun, simply because if any of the threads have picked up when they've been tightened, then you're in a whole world of pain, because you could strip the thread and that would mean my helicoil in it, and I don't want to play that game. So that's them. Them's the 6mm ones. Okay, now we're on to the big beasties. Okay, these have a specific order in which to tighten. So, the number, each one's got a number. I don't know if I can make you see this. Each one has a number. You can see that. You can see number 4 on that one. It's number 2 on that one. That one, it's in the casting there. So every single bolt has a number. So when you're undoing it, you've got to undo it by number, otherwise you risk. It's actually more important when you're tightening them than it is when you're undoing them, but you've still got to start at number 1 and go all the way to number 12. There's 12 bolts. That's number 1. Off we go. These will be tight, so perhaps I should use a shorter extension. That's number 1. 1, that's 2, 11, 12. Okay, buzz them out. Okay. Okay, that should be all the bolts out. On the front of the casing there's two pieces of casting, one there and one there. Now if I just pop a screwdriver in there and just gently, that should be enough to, there we are, enough to break the seal. You don't have to be ham-fisted, you don't have to use Harris Nelson, you don't have to be like a man possessed, woman possessed, whatever. Right, so now all we have to do is just give it a waggle and it's off. That was easy. There we go. Crankcases separated. All the important bits. Let's turn that round. Let's turn that round. Right, okay. So you've got crankshaft, main bearings, 6 bearing crank. Them's your big end bearings. They actually don't look bad then. Hardly running. Okay, 6-speed gearbox in there. I am not going to disturb any of that for a minute. I'm going to concentrate on the top of the crank. Actually, it's not the top, is it? The bottom of the crankcases. So now we've got to the point where the crankcase is separated. We've got the lower crankcase in front of us. What we need to do now is we need to take out the shells. Now these big end shells need to be kept in their original locations. Lower shells in the lower crankcase half, upper shells in the upper crankcase half, with each shell staying with its corresponding bearing on the crankshaft. If you mix them up, you'll find that when the engine restarts after being reassembled, they tend to rebed in, and they don't wear evenly, so they've already got wear marks on them, slight traces of where the crankshaft has polished the bearing. So we need to keep the same bearing with the same journal on the crankshaft. Also, some of these have got like a groove cut in them, as you can see, and some of them are like plain bearings. So we need to make sure that they stay in the correct locations. Otherwise, oil feed to the big end bearings through journals in the crankshaft will be restricted. Okay, so we'll take these out. We'll match them up with the other ones on the other crankcase. We'll put them somewhere safe before we do any more work on this, because I don't want to get these mixed up. Thank you. Okay, you can see I've taken those bearings off out of the lower crankcase and I've marked them all. Wiped the oil off them and marked them all with a marker pen. One indicating the position and L indicating lower crankcase half. As you can see, on the crankshaft I've marked that end with number 1 and I've marked that end with number 6. So each corresponding shell will have its position on reassembly. So the next task is to take the crankshaft out of here, mark all the shells, there we go. Oh, I've also loosened the big end cap bolts on these. I've undone them nuts. While the crank's resting in that, it's in a good stable position to just use impact gun just to loosen them. I'm going to take them apart for cleaning, but obviously while it's in the crankcase, it's well supported, so it's a good time to undo them. So yeah, that's where we're at. We'll take that out now and then we'll see where we go from there. Okay, so we've got the crankshaft out, taking the cam chain off. We're just about to mark these remaining shells. With the corresponding numbers. one L and one U. Lower crankcase, upper crankcase. So we'll do all that. Oh, first, let's say these shells are in really good condition. So give it a good wipe. Number 2 on that one. Okay, that's all shells marked up. Right, so what we'll do now, put them somewhere safe. Alright, all marked. It's hard enough to clean these things at the best of times. Put my black bin liner, will protect me against crap. So we've got the cam chain. So again, to prevent ingress of grit, put that in a bag. Seal it up, nicely protected. Next task, we've got our 2 gear lay shafts to take out, and a couple of dowels, of course. Don't forget the dowels. We'll come to dowels in a minute. Let's get these out and put in bags. So very carefully, should be just be able to lift that straight out. Maybe not. Okay, that's quite tight in there. It's yeah, quite tight in there. There we go. And that is the input shaft, the shaft where the clutch goes. And put that in a bag. And our output shaft, that's tight now. Give that a nudge. Again, it's a rubber faced hammer. Rubber faced. Okay, don't use metal faced hammers on this. Just need a bit of shock just to get it out of its seating. There we go. And that is the output shaft. Okay, just as a side note, we're just using freezer bags here. It keeps all the relative bits and pieces together, and also helps to prevent ingress of grit, dirt, sludge, whatever. Sludge, what am I talking about? Sludge. Right, now then, we've got a few things left to take off this. It's a few old dowels. You've got a dowel there, a dowel there, you've got a locating collar there, a locating collar there, you can see that, look. There's a dowel there and a dowel there, and we can also remove this bit of pipe. So let's get the dowels out first. So let's turn her over, let's scrape some gaskets off while we've got her in this position. Oh, I tell you what I should have done actually, for all you naysayers out there. Tell you what we'll do. Yeah, look. For all you naysayers out there. Them's the dowels I've just taken out. Yeah, it's got a bit of sealant on it, that's what made it stick. There's the other one, no damage done. Very, very gently with the pliers. Bit of heat, bit of pressure. Okay. That's how you get them out. Always better to remove as much as you possibly can. Okay, bit of gasket scraping going on. Right, there we go. Okay, it's time to clean and degrease. See you in a bit.